Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Drawing for Comics. This week, we're going to be working on gesture drawings. Gesture drawings are how we capture motion and action in our drawings. So let's get right into it. You can see here I have the typical wooden artist mannequin, and what I want to show you today is just how we try to capture the motion and energy in that picture. So really what we want to do is find the main action lines. So you can see right here we have the leg and head and how this line kind of moves up this way. And that diagonal kind of line is really what is giving us that forward momentum feeling. He's running this way. So these lines that come in really give us a sense that he's moving this way. And then of course you have the counter lines that balance out the figure. So we're going to start with something like that. So really what you want to do is you're watching people running maybe on the beach. It's summertime. People on the beach are running around, they're flying kites, they're playing volleyball, whatever it is, and you just want to really quickly just grab the action and energy of that scene. So you don't want to spend a lot of time working on detail work right away. You really just only have a few seconds to capture that motion. So that's really what we're going to do here. So as I said, right here you want to get that very quick line, just denoting the motion. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can kind of throw the head in there if you want, just to give yourself an idea. But you can see how already, just with a few lines, this already looks like this this character is moving quite quickly down the road, down the beach, whatever it is, and you have that sense of motion. This arc to the line shows that a lot of the weight is this way, is forward. You can see you can already picture the leg going back behind, that kind of thing. So let's work on a couple other photos and see how this applies to actual people. Okay, so here you see we have our triathlon runners getting ready for the swimming portion of their run. And what we want to do quickly, right now for this exercise, we're still pretending we're watching them live. And we just need to grab those main action lines I just spoke about before. So with this runner right here, you see this main center line, it's very angled. We've got less of an angle on this runner, so he's not going quite as fast, there's not as much action. Same here. You know, he's running, but not crazy diving like this gentleman back here is and this first gentleman here. And then what we need, as I mentioned before on the wood mannequin, is those counterbalance lines that create more tension by having the opposing force. So you have the main action line of this first swimmer here, and then we can see his arm jetting out, which creates that tension here and further pushes his body weight forward. And again, we can put the head in here if we want to, just to give us a guideline where it goes. You can mention the other hand here. And again, if we're doing this live, this is just notes, really. We're not going too deep into the construction of the figure. So again, here we have this center line. It's the main action line here. And then the legs are creating that balance point, that tension, counter to the body weight of the figure. Again, there's an arm in here, and the head. And then same here, we've got that main line, then we have the balance lines that create more tension for us, just like that. Here. Okay. And that is that. So what if we're not watching this live? What if we had an illustration assignment and this was a scene maybe in a comic book or for a book that we're illustrating, whatever it is. So we actually have the photo here to work from, and we have all the time in the world to work on it, build the figures, whatever. Same basic ideas, same principles still apply. We still want to capture that motion in the gesture before we go into the details of building the figures. So what we're going to do is, starting with this guy right here, we're just going to rough him in real quick. And again, even though we have the picture to go by, doesn't mean we want to take forever in the gesture stage. We still want to just very quickly come in, grab that motion, and get it down on the paper. Because if we take a long time with it, if we get into the minutia of the way these characters look, then it's going to tighten up our drawings, actually, and our drawings will feel more stiff. We want to really work quickly and loosely to capture that action and really capture the energy, because we're creating a two-dimensional static image, and we've got to breathe some life into it and make these people look like they're actually running. Excuse me. Just like that. Okay, now that we've done that, now that we have those main action lines down, then we can go in, we can darken up our pen, or brush, or pencil, or however you want to look at it. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And then we can go in and worry about actually creating a figure from this. So this is our undersketch. This is going to be our guidelines. But I have the action, but I have no proportions, I have no body mass, I have no anything. And we talked before about building up the figure with the basic shapes, the torso, the head, the arms, etc. So now what we're going to do is apply that. So I know I want his head in here. So I'm going to go a little bit more slowly and build the head. Now there's a couple ways to do this. I'm kind of zoomed in here so you can see what I'm doing, but really you have this picture to work with, and you want to be looking kind of back and forth. So we can see that we have the head here, and then his arm is actually over behind his body, so we actually have his chest in here. We've got a shoulder that comes up here, because in order to move his arm like this the way he is, that shoulder has to come up by his head. And his forearm here, and we have the bicep right in here. His body mass coming down this way, that kind of thing. And then he's got the spray from the water, which is something we'll get into in another video, how to add kind of effects like that and just kind of rough in where his head is going to be. Now, depending on your assignment, maybe you need to really capture this image. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're using this as reference and you're going to stylize it, and it doesn't have to be photorealistic or accurate. Either way is fine. We'll go into a little bit later, kind of looking at your pictures to really perfectly recreating them. But right now, what we're really interested in right now is just getting the gesture down and building the figure. So I'm not going to go all the way in with these figures and make final pictures, because it's not the purpose of this video. But I'm just going to show you quickly how, using these basic lines, we can go in and really create the figure. So I just want to rough in some of these basic shapes and masses here, so you can get an idea of how we go from the basic line drawing into more complete figure. So I'm just going to, again, rough in his arm here, have it come down, and really, you can see in the photo the arm is coming back and then down straighter. I have it more forward. I can move it back here if I want to. Again, we're not really working on the full picture, so I'm not really concerned right now. Just kind of showing what the next step would be. Just like that. So you get the idea. So let's go on to our third image, and we'll talk about a little bit more about how to get these quick line sketches down, and also another way to do gesture and build up the figure. So we'll be right back in just a second. Okay, so here we have our boxing figure. It's a nice dynamic pose coming kind of straight on. We've been doing poses off to the side for the last couple of pictures. So let's do one where it's kind of coming right at us. You're going to notice some things that have to do with foreshortening and dynamic foreshortening. We're not going to cover that directly right now. We'll do that in another video. But this is a really good picture in terms of a nice dynamic pose for us to capture some action. So again, you can already see this main action line in the boxer right here. Nice tilt to it, which we already discussed, gives us our action, because of course the nice perfectly straight lines are nice, but it's very still, and as we tilt the picture more and more, then we get some nice action, especially with an arcing line like that. Really denotes some movement this way, which you can kind of see actually in the arm here. There's a nice sweeping motion to his arm. Has a lot of motion and energy to it. So let's talk about how we create and capture that motion with using some basic shapes rather than just those lines. What I will normally do is I will still start with that main action line right in the center of the body, and then build off from that, kind of like when I'm doing the standing picture like we did in the proportion video. I had the center line, and then I had all the heads coming down. Same idea. I always start with that line because that is the spine. That's where everything's going to kind of be built off of. And then what we'll do from here is often I'll start with the head, which you can see is I'm going to put in slightly at a different angle than the main center line, just to give a little bit more action to the piece. Here, let me clean this up a little bit just so it's a little easier to look at. As I said in the previous video, don't be afraid to sketch and find your line, but for the purpose of the tutorial, I kind of want to keep things somewhat clean. There we go. Forgive the little whatever that is right there. And then we're going to come down with the neck, which is going to follow the line more. Now, even with this, I still don't want to take too much time worrying about the proportions right off. You still want to be relatively quick. You know, I'm not just doing those basic lines. I am putting in, you know, his collarbones right here, the neck muscles. I am using the shapes to help build the mass at the same time I capture the action. But if I take too long to do this, I'm going to stiffen up my picture, like we talked about earlier. So I still want to be relatively quick and making sure I'm really focusing on this angle here. You see I have the chest kind of running out this way, and then I have his lower torso pulling back away from him. Now what you might see as I go through is a little bit more exaggeration from the image. Even though this is a CGI image, this isn't a photo. It's fairly photoreal. The proportions are fairly real. In comics, though, you want to push. You want to kind of push your boundaries a little bit. As you may have noticed when I did the mannequin, you can see that I exaggerated this line from, you know, here it's much more vertical. I really swooped that line and pushed it forward, and that exaggeration is what helps us get that nice dynamic pose from our art. So let's go ahead and hide this back, bring this layer back here, put that back. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, is I'm kind of exaggerating it a little more. Now, if I'm going to do that, I have to be sure to counterbalance it. So as I put in the mass of the leg here, and again, we'll get more into dynamic figure drawing in another video. But since I have really pushed this line, I have to make sure this leg comes out and is really stabilizing the figure again. And again, there's some stuff I can fix on here later that I'm already seeing is not quite the way I'm going to want it. But again, we're trying to quickly capture the pose. We want to be relatively quick with this to keep from stiffening up too much, because we're trying to capture that energy. You can already see these proportions are a little off, but again, it's not really what we're concerned with right now. I'm going to build up the shoulder. Now I have to be careful not to put too much weight over here, because if I put too much over here, then we start to alter this angle here. The body mass starts to shift back this way, and we're going to end up with a main action that looks a little bit more like that. So we want to be careful to avoid that. But we also have to make sure that we get the powerful muscle in here. Now again, we're trying to be fast. We're trying to capture the motion, the arc. Remember I mentioned earlier the arc that fist had, or that arm had, excuse me. But I'm also building up his mass, so I'm going to take a little bit more time to build this out. And again, we'll cover some construction techniques for that in a later video. But just kind of to bring home, you know, the overall shape that we want to get and the overall feeling. We want to keep that smooth, arcing motion of the punch. And then we'll put the fist here just because it is. I probably personally wouldn't have put his back fist there, but I see what they're going for, and that's the way it is in the original picture. So, so there you have it, roughed out. Again, very quick. Paying some attention to proportion, but mainly just trying to get that gesture, but building up the body mass at the same time. And then what I can do from here is really come in. Here, let's darken this up so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Then really come in and be like, okay, I want his neck to come in like this. And start of his chest here. And really just kind of fix these shapes and tighten up my drawing. And really I should be doing this on a different layer, but again, we're not really, this isn't a full figure drawing video. We're just kind of going over the concepts. But you can see how I can kind of refine, excuse my somewhat messy digital penciling. As I mentioned earlier, I usually do this step traditionally, so I'm not as controlled with the underdrawing piece of it as I am with the inking and things like that, or I am with the underdrawing on paper. So, but you can kind of see what I'm going for here. Again, I'm overlapping the shapes of the arm, which we'll cover in a later video. I'm going to bring this up a little higher this time just to kind of better match our reference. And again, we'll do reference properly in another video. All kinds of fun things coming, but just take a couple minutes here, or not a couple minutes, but a little bit just to show you how we kind of continue to develop the picture and refine it as we go. Again, finding that center line for the front like we did with the proportion video. Keeping that swooping action to his back, bringing that in this way. Building out the hip. But again, it's going back into space, so it has to kind of recede back as well. Actually, this should come up here a little bit more, I think. That kind of thing. And drawing a little bit more of this leg, just because it is important to get that strong foundation for the figure. You don't want your figure to look unbalanced. Kind of like that. Okay, and that's how we kind of build up the figure from a gesture drawing. And of course, you keep refining it layer upon layer until I have the look that I want, and then go into the final inks where I have a final image. So that's gesture. Practice with this. Practice capturing the motion with the swooping lines and with the shapes. And you can even really get, if you're not going to make a finalized picture out of it, you really can kind of come in and just use shapes. Just get the mass of the figure. You know, it can look messy because you're just practicing capturing the motion of the figure, and that's really exaggerated, but you get the idea of what I'm going for here. Because you're never going to really take this any further, so you don't have to worry about cleaning it up enough to kind of see where you're going next. Some things to remember when we're talking about motion and dynamicism, and we'll talk about it again in a later video, is the pelvis in relation to the shoulder. The further we can kind of increase this space, let me fix that arrow. The more room we have between the two, the more we can separate them within reason, because you start to lose credibility if it gets too crazy. But the further we can push that space, the more dynamic the figure is going to look. Okay, so practice with that. Next time we'll keep going with with building the figure, putting the figure in different poses. And then eventually we'll get into reference and things like that as well. Again, please remember to subscribe to the channel. If there's something you want to see covered in a future video, let us know down in the comments, and I will work that into the rotation as well. Until then, we'll see you next time.